So, welcome, guys. For the optimizing your React application. So, this talk is pretty much about, when you're building an application, it so happens that you put on so many modules. So, you go on, developing in such a way that you develop feature upon feature, and the app becomes really huge at one point. Okay, and you don't worry about how the JavaScript is increasing or how much his the load of the page or how much is the component even actually able to handle. Initially, you would actually create the particular component, imagining that the best case scenario of that particular initial feature request. But as the application grows, the component load, we are not able to test it. So about me, I'm a freelance consultant right now. I'm FOSS evangelist, where I promote more of a free software, kind of stuff, and open source, anything and everything about open source. I would like to, help on that. So I have been part of the initial team of the HackerEarth, which is like a tech hiring company. And yeah, I love football and I love chess. That's what I play in, in my free time. So about my configuration, about what I'll be talking about, the optimization. It'll be about all the things that are on React above 16 versions, having a Webpack 4 configuration, and this will be more on client-side rendering. Okay, and when I say client-side rendering, I'm not going into more of a server-side rendering. It's just purely focused to client-side. So now the question it starts here is, how do you know whether your app is slow? You know, so one of the things that we actually, it's pretty initially we can get to know when initially all the things works really good. When the app grows a lot, the component becomes really slow, in the sense that you can see that there is a sluggish behavior. When you scroll down, there is a jittery in that particular application, or let's say it takes a lot of time for that component to load. Initially it never used to happen, but later as a component grew, it started happening. Yeah. uh, One sec. If am I fast or am I slow? I just wanted to hear from you guys. I might be going really, really fast here. If you can say anywhere. Okay. Okay, that's great. I'll actually go. Okay. So then that said, as we see the page component, if it's low and if the page crashes or anything like that, I mean, it's like you see there's something wrong. This is when we actually go into optimization. Now, this is where I want to go into more of analyzing your applications. Okay. So first thing, what I'm gonna say is not like silver lining to every single stuff. This is more like how can we debug or how can we find out how to optimize the things. What is the approach I would actually take to build the application into more scalable way. Yeah. So for that, let's say that there are some routes, you have built, routes using React Router and various stuff. There are a few routes which have high traffic. So primarily it is more on a login screen. There is register that comes in. After you log in, then there might be a listing or a dashboard. These three are the highly traffic pages that happens, right? And I would actually would analyze, seeing your analytics, or let's say Google Analytics or any of your analytics to find out these are the routes where my lot of traffic is coming, and I want to have the highest speed index over here. Okay. Now talking about that, I'll also see what is the medium that my product is using. Um, so a lot of times it so happens that people might not be supporting Internet Explorer, or say people might not be supporting Android, or say iOS, or it could be anything, but it's much of a note that you find out, okay, this is what we want to have. And okay, now there are a few tools where we can actually analyze your React application. One is a webpagetest.org. I think most of you might be knowing or not. So this is pretty good tool where you can try it out. And there is this Lighthouse audit tool. So I'll be explaining about that. These two you can just check it out, but other things I'll be. When you're analyzing your React application, it's really important how much amount of your JavaScript is. So when I'm saying how much amount of your JavaScript is, I'm talking about the production version of your JavaScript. It should not cross a particular limit. Ideally, we try to chunk our application in such a way that maximum it comes to 200. That's more like, standard kind of stuff. But 200 is again, it's just a standard. It should not grow more than that kind of thing. And yeah, then later comes Webpack Bundle Analyzer. I'll talk about this in some time. Now, when it comes to optimizations, right? There are these steps which I'll be going ahead. These are the points which I'll be touching in the whole talk right now. And first, as soon as you have any optimization that you want to check, or let's say if there is any error that comes in. So right now I use Chrome. You can use Firefox. You can use Safari for any of the dev tools. But Chrome has more of a good audit tools that I use with. I'm pretty comfortable with that. So I'll just say that Chrome dev tools. Then we have to also check about your unused code, how much code that you are actually writing and how much is getting used. Okay, this is pretty much really important. All of this topic I'll be explaining in detail later. And then comes about the heavy libraries, about when you actually use certain libraries. Like if you want, there is a feature that is coming in and your manager says that we have to get this done. So what you do is you just install that particular library as soon as possible to get the work done. But there is a side effect. It actually installs a lot of other libraries, and the size of that library might be huge. And this all comprises to, a lot of optimization issues. And later we'll talk about handling how the excess render and the reconciliation issue comes in, how to reduce JavaScript size, and how can caching be used to actually improve all the your JavaScript speed, or how much the delivery is happening in the client side. So talking about the Chrome dev tools, you have this audit option that you see. I won't be demoing a lot of stuff here right now. I'll be just showing you this audit tools or other things. And what we'll do is after this session, anyways, in the Q&A, we'll have you can make a list of all the things that you want to ask about. Right now, I'll just give you a headliner about all of these things. And we'll go back to the social launch where we can discuss about, you have any questions, you can wait over there and we'll chat on that. So like I said, the audit is where, let's say you have created a register form. Okay. Now in the register, you can actually make a recording about how audit works. So you can go to the Chrome, there is something audit and there's a record option. Click on, if you want to say, let's say that when in the login form, as soon as you type your username and the password, as you press submit, there is a loading issue that happens, that it takes time. So what you can do is you can make a recording before you type over there, and after submit, you can understand how the login works. This is where Chrome DevTools audit can come into picture, where you'll get a very, very basic insight about which all JavaScript is taking so much time. Then the most important, Chrome DevTools is like, in the Chrome DevTools, you'll have React Profiler. This is not inbuilt of Chrome DevTools, but it comes like an add-on. It's more of an extension where you have to install React extension. Where previously it was just a React components where you can actually check it out. Now they have divided in the latest version as a components and a profiler. So what you see right now is just a flame chart, where now you can see that all these components getting, let's say that I have recorded all of this stuff, okay, where you can see there are this many components that is getting rendered. And if I click on anything, it actually shows me, okay, how many components are within that. It's like a nesting of that. And when I click on any of that particular component, you can also see how much time it took. The render duration is one that will actually tell you that how much time this is taking. Then there is another thing called component chart, where you can see this is pretty much similar to flame chart, but how component chart differs from that is that it will give you inline about each component. Now, let's say I have clicked on list. You can see that within list, there are so many, now we are into the unused code. How can we actually, since we write so many code, we actually forget a lot of times that, there are this set of codes which we're not using. Or let's say that there are even the codes are loading, even though it's not used in that particular component. So Webpack Bundle Analyzer is a really great tool of analyzing how many components are there, how many third-party libraries are there, and which is taking more space. So now, so I'll just show you, let's say that you might have seen how the Redux logger works. This is the very basic, working of Redux logger that most of you might have created. Like in the production, if it's not in production, you don't run the Redux logger. You just want to see what are the changes that is present. But when you actually build this particular bundle, even the Redux logger goes into that picture. And that said, if I want to, so the one of the solution, how can I actually not load Redux logger in the production is, I mean, it doesn't matter that you're actually not using the logger over there, but you have imported everything, even though it's not in production. Sorry, even though it's in production. Now, if I want to make it more dynamic, I'll actually use the common way, that is async await, to actually make it. So I'm gonna create a function like async, which is gonna just import the Redux logger library. So await expects a function over there. And what I return in the end is, after await is completed, I just return the logger. And you can see in that if block that I'm calling the await Redux logger. When that is complete, then I actually push the logger. So basically, the logger is not bundled until it's used. So basically, in the production, this particular component, this particular code is never loaded. This particular library is never loaded. So this is one of the way where you can use Redux logger. Okay, sorry, you're not able to see the screen. Okay, one sec. I'm sorry about that. I think I missed it. Okay, this is the issue when this is a webinar happens. Sorry about that. Okay, so I was talking about the dynamic imports that happens. Now you can see that even though there is this the library is still getting imported, even though I'm not in the dev. In the production, it still gets loaded. So like I said, you can use async await, and this is one of the pattern where you can use to make it dynamic. Yep. And let's go ahead. Now, there is another interesting way of where, since we have been talking about the libraries, now it actually goes into conditional rendering of components too. Now, in this, there is React Lazy and Suspend, which latest 16.8 has been released. And in that, what it says is that if you want to load a component, you can actually load the component when it's used, like pretty much dynamic, So this is one of the patterns where you can see that sample component is getting loaded by lazy. So until I have this stage, let's say in my state, there is this stage where I'm saying that, okay, now if I'm in this editing stage, then only I have to load this component. I have to load this module. So this does is it just puts like a loader over there. Until the lazy doesn't give you the promise that it has completed, the suspense will be there. As soon as it gets completed, the sample component gets loaded. And there are like a lot of libraries, third-party libraries like React Loadable, where you can use. But React Lazy and Suspense are part of React, and I would actually use that. Now, going ahead with analyzing libraries, where I was talking about. Now, you have this Webpack Bundle Analyzer, where you can analyze that. Okay, there are a lot of lot of modules that you're using, lot of libraries that you're using. Let's say that Moment.js is one of the thing. What happens is, let's say your manager comes and he tells you that I want to humanize the timestamp. Like if it's saying date, month, and year, I want it to show 3 days ago or an hour ago, something like that, so that people can understand and relate to it. Okay, and for that, many of you, to get the things done, they actually go ahead and install Moment.js. Moment.js has an API, that moment.humanize, which can get the things done. And rather than that, see, there is another tool where you can check the size of each library. That's called bundle phobia. And that's like really good too. If you are installing any libraries, you can check before installing, like how is it maintained, how are the previous version are there, how is the version handled in that. So all of this information will be given over there. So what I would go ahead with, if you're using just a humanized, there are like a lot of libraries, small libraries, which can, yeah, get your work done. So there's something called humanized duration, which is just 16 KB. So you can see that there is a reduce of 200 KB that has decreased from the bundle. So, or you can create your own, library to get the work done. So this is how Webpack, bundle analyzer can help you in understanding which libraries are taking too much of your space. And it so happens that you install so many duplicate libraries that there might be some of the libraries that will be of a different versions. So it's one of the way of how we can remove that. Okay, now when we are talking about the renders, one of the issues of the optimization is that of having excess render, the and reconciliations. You know, so what I'm talking about, first part here is, let's say that when parent is passing props to its children and it goes to other children's likewise. So we have one of the habit of passing, spreading the whole props using the ES6 syntax of spread operator, passing all the props in within a component. So that's like an anti-pattern of how React works. So what you can do is you can just pass only those props that you will have to use. So that will actually improve your optimization. That will improve how much each props is taking, or how much arguments. The size of that will be decreasing. And this second point, anonymous functions and inline object call, is really tricky one. So everyone might have seen that this is the first one, component on click. You might have seen that event, you pass it via the fat arrow, like this handle click E. And this is a common pattern that everyone does use. And the issue with that is, every time you create that, it creates a new closure, it creates a new object, and it creates a new reference. So as soon as you have each render, it will create more references to that, and there will be more memory intake on that. So one of the best way of how you can optimize that is, in the render, before you actually make a return, you can actually make a call of, you can define all your handle click, what the function which I have written here, and you can define on the global state of your component, and you can, use it over here. Like I have this dot handle click, which you can set. When I say global state, it means within the render part, so that the handle click is not registered again and again. So it goes with same line about inline objects, where you might have seen that you use style equal to, then you define width of 100 pixel within two objects, right? So even that does the same thing. It creates a new object whenever that happens. Whenever a new object is created, that's like a new render that happens. So this is where excess render happens. And this is where I was talking about the reconciliation also, where reconciliation is a process of finding the minimum number of changes that must be made in order to make the version tree similar to the actual DOM tree, right? So the minimum changes it sees, that's the best thing. The reconciliation works at the best that time. And to actually make it much better, pure components is, I think you might be knowing or not, pure components is like really one of the really good ways of how you can improve your React app, where you have your should component update. So all of this thing, should component update is, all these properties is present in pure component. It does the shallow check upon the props and the states, and so that it doesn't make re-rendering of unwanted checks. Yeah. And this is a very interesting thing that most of the people actually go ahead and have an issue. That is the keys that we use in iterable components. It gives a warning in the console that the key is missing, or warning there are multiple instances of duplicate keys, right? Keys are the essence of how you can optimize the rendering. So what happens is, initially, if you're using math.random, all of these are ways your application will work. Your application will be seen to the users. But there will be a issue on how much objects are getting rendered, how much checks are happening. Let's say you're using master.random to use within keys that this is the key that I have to use, right? That time, what happens is every time a master.random creates a new key, it actually the previous virtual DOM and the next actual DOM tree check, it misses out, because of which there is too much excess render that happens. To make it better, the second thing is index can improve it a lot better, but index, it always matters where it is getting checked. If it is the first element of the key of the iterable component, it is the best. If you're talking about the if you're checking the performance of the last element, then it misses out. Then to actually make it really good, so how we can go ahead with this, if you have the unique IDs that is getting passed by objects, then you can create keys using that. So it never changes, and this is one of the really optimized approach of how keys can optimize your components. And to make it better, few components above this particular components having the keys as a unique ID via objects is the ideal scenario. Now optimization goes into this part where we have to reducing the JavaScript size. Like I said, now with the latest Create React app, the chunking happens by default. That's what we call as tree shaking. That if you're not using any component, it actually it doesn't load that. So all these chunks happen over there. But it's also good. There is this tool that we call it's called bit.dev, where you can use, where it can create this common repository of how your small component, you can load it over there, and you can actually use it again in different repositories. So you can this is more like a micro chunking. There are other tools like learner and git modules that can help you with a similar part, but I felt bit.dev is something, it's again it's chargeable. If you're open source, I think all of their repositories you can create unlimited, but you can go with bit.dev or learner. Then the caching of vendor bundle is really important, because let's say initially what happens is the basic by default configuration that if you're using Create React app, it will chunk your all these components, everything, and the vendors will not be there in the creator. So you can create entry points. I'll give you an example. Let's say your whole application is having both a media query of desktop and mobile. Now you can separate both of them, having the entry points within a webpack. You can say that, okay, now this component A has to load only for desktop, and this component B has to load only for mobile. When you're bundling, it will not render. So then what happens, you can keep the vendor bundle separate. I would suggest vendor, make it cache for like a month, which so that when you actually make a request, when you're any of the CloudFront or any of the access, these tools can actually help you out, so that all these libraries, the JavaScript that is getting cached, it will not get downloaded again. It will be in the cache, and it will be easy, and your application will be more faster. And another thing which we have to notice, never overload the DOM. So what we try to do is so pagination is important, but pagination is not the solution for everything. So what you can go with is virtualized tables. So even that's like a really good tool. And you can use intersection observers to load the component. Just check out intersection observer. This is one of the newest APIs that's come out. I mean, it has been there for long, but it's pretty stable now. And intersection observers help you when the component is seen or not. So basically, if you want to load a component when your window is in, let's say that your video should pause if you're not in focus, you can use intersection observer for that. It can easily, very nicely handle that. So that's pretty much it about this optimization scenario. So I have gone with various references here with all these things. This slide is even available over there. And I have went through pretty much like the Q&A to be a bit longer. So any questions, guys? Hello.
I think I have some hand raised already.
Yeah.
So we can start with. Yeah, I think Aditya is there with us.
Yeah, hey Aditya.
Yeah, I've just asked a question. So how can we optimize a page which is loading a lot of images which have a huge size? Like if there is a products page and there are a lot of images.
Okay, so let's say if there are like a list of images that are there. So one is a good way is having a progressive rendering that you can do, where it's if you have seen Medium how it works, what it will do is it will have a small micro image of that particular huge image. Okay, and as it loads, right, you can use this React Lazy and Suspense to do this progressive rendering, and it will actually when that whole big image is downloaded, it will replace that micro image and it will give you the whole smooth flow. So that's one of the way. And using intersection observer, you can load those components, load those images as you scroll down, like within that particular, whatever you're seeing, that screen, right? If you screen, then only using the intersection observer, you can call more images as you actually flow.
Okay. So will we have to save two images in the backend? So one is the actual image and another one is a scaled down version of it.
Yeah, so
less
we call it like
pixelated,
right, small pixelated images. So that will be like what, even not even 1 KB of it. So yeah, so like I said, that particular image, if say 200 KB is like really huge image or like 1 MB. So this particular images will be like a icon size, small images. So it won't even matter. So whenever you're actually pushing images to your pipeline, let there be another process that actually turns this application, that image into a small icon size, so that you enlarge it, blur it in such a way that, okay, there's something loading. Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll just withdraw. Okay. So there are some questions in chat as well. There are any tools to automate performance testing, like from Niaz Rahman?
Okay, so performance testing, I would go with having Circle CI where I can actually test the particular components. Where what would having the test-driven development is the best case, where you can actually show that as you develop a component, you write a test case, and you can put more and more data to it later. But using Circle CI is one of the best way of testing it. Everything can be automated. You can test it out how easily your component is handling.
Okay. I hope that answered your question, Yas. So we are having 2 hand raised already. So
and then good tools. Like I said, there are Lighthouse where I was going with, and web page test is something really good at. And yeah, so that's the same thing.
Okay, so there is Smile who is trying to answer questions.
Okay, so I think Yash has asked about how to handle infinite scroll with 1,000 image with intersection observer. So okay, you don't have to. You can have the URLs of all the images. Well, this is one of the way in a list, and what you can do is when you do pagination. Yeah, hey, Yash.
Hi.
We are having right now.
Yeah, I have one doubt as well. Like when we are doing infinite scrolling at the time, does it require just replacing the image, or just loading the whole image? After that the other components. So in that case, it will be at the time it can be possible like a 1,000 image in a one single DOM. So yeah, that was the question. Yeah.
Okay, so there is this famous site, Jiffy. If you have seen it, to get all the GIF and all, this is one of the best site. But if you see the tech part of it, as you scroll down, the other image on the top is actually removed from the DOM, right? And via infinite scroll, you can optimize it. This is what you said is like pretty much the right thing. When you're loading, you don't have to load everything. In the DOM, you'll have like thousands of images over there, right? So the best scenario is that all the things, you can have a component, you can assume that it's like a vertical carousel, right? All the things that are on the top will get loaded again. It's like so there are pros and cons to it. So your DOM will be at the best state here when you're doing this. And the cons is that there are more multiple requests that happens whenever you do this. And intersection or not, it can help, but really good. I mean, yes,
Okay.
does that handle? So I'll be available in social launch also, Yash. I mean, I can talk and help you out with how to do.
Okay. I think we have answered all the questions. Do you guys have any? I think Aditya has asked one more question. Would dividing the Redux stores into multiple stores help in optimizing in some way?
Wait, sorry. Okay. So Aditya, yes. Okay, there's echo happening. Sorry. Okay. Okay, sorry. Now, using Redis stores on multiple stores, definitely there are having one store for whole thing. So if you have seen the older version, like Flux, everything used to have different stores that used to maintain. So having multiple stores is actually a good way where you can have the privacy of concerns. All you can maintain for this components will have only for this stores. You're not overloading a lot of things into that particular store, and you can maintain it whichever you want. And this is pretty much like I would say a design pattern where it totally depends upon your application how you're going with. Like a lot of people prefer to have single store which can deliver everything and delete other things when it's not used. Then okay. Now
Some questions
okay.
are in general section as well.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So I'm checking that out. Okay. So now, okay, now can context API instead of Redux? So Redux is completely different. If you're trying to compare with context API and how context API actually works with that. So what I can say is that with hooks coming into picture, you have use reducer that actually turns the game as how you can use it like a Redux, but it's hooks is completely different in that particular scenario. So what I would actually go ahead with that is who has asked this question? Can API? Okay, sorry. Oh yeah, Vinit Panwar. So I can actually come back to you on the backstage over there, and I can discuss about that context plus hooks. How can it serve on the purpose Redux?
There is one question from Rahul as well. Would single page application be considered as overloading to DOM?
Well, with React, how it's working is now, it's like pretty much every application is more like a single page application that is getting rendered. I mean, you're not actually refreshing the whole thing. And again, single page application is not overloading until, I mean, again, it depends upon the scenario of how you're actually handling it. Where, sorry, one. Okay, sorry. Yeah, basically the single page application, when I say, it completely depends. Like I was explaining about, there was like multiple images getting rendered in the same page. You can handle that, using a single page. It completely depends on your practical applications also, how you're going ahead. And like, consider that there are like a lot of forms over there. And if you want to handle it, it's not considered like overloading. So there are multiple ways of making it optimized. And yes, how to persist Redux state on refresh. So basically, there is a library called Redux Persist, which can actually help you out in persisting the data. And okay. So like I said, with having SSR over CSR now, all the presentation which I gave right now is pretty focused on the CSR part, and I have very less experience with the server-side rendering. But what I can say is, uh, people mostly they actually go ahead with SSR because initially you actually are concerned with the SEO everything, and you actually render all the things from the back end. So there is a performance boost because there's not much computation you're giving into the client to do, but you're already computing all the data and you're actually sending it. There's definitely a performance boost to that server-side running. Anything else? So let's do this, Sana. Like we can actually go back to
Launch, yeah.
the launch, and I think everyone might be placed. I'll actually come back to each desk over there, spend some time, and if they have any questions, I'll actually sort it out on the spot. And if that's fine with you guys.
Yeah, I think that's fine. You can reply here in the chat box if that is okay with you.
Yeah. So we're going back to the launch. You might have taken some seats, right? I'll just come back to that.
Yeah, so guys, one thing, like take 3 seats so that 1 seat will be there for the speaker. Otherwise, he won't be able to join. So you can grab 3 seats in one table, and then Santosh can come there and he can answer any of your questions. I hope that's fine.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. Nobody's replying. You can say yes or no.
Okay.
Okay, yes, great. Fine. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for attending the webinar. We are very grateful, and enjoy your lockdown if possible. Today is Saturday. Enjoy your Saturday and be safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.